Morning. Welcome to Caffeinate Your Career. Today's topic, overqualified. Myth or a real barrier? I'm your host, the career coach with the most, Jason Hopper. With me today, Scott, it's been like 6 months since you've been on the podcast.
I've just been sitting at home waiting for
You've been waiting for the call all this time. Welcome back. It's great to have you back. This is the world-renowned talent acquisition specialist, Scott Butnick. Scott, it's because it's been a minute. Why don't you give us your 30-second commercial real quick?
Life is great, enjoyed the work I did. Hope I helped some people take the next step in their careers. I think I did, and I felt good about the work I did. I felt good about the relationships, pardon me, that I formed. And I'm just excited for the opportunity to give something back and maybe help people here that are watching and so on that work with CFS on a daily, weekly basis, help you take the next step in your career.
Yeah. You were in recruiting for many years.
Pretty close to 30.
Yeah.
Just a little bit less than 30. Was it? Yeah. A little more than 30 years now. My arithmetic stinks, so.
You and me, but it's very well known that I don't do math well.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So Scott, let's talk about being overqualified. Like, what does that actually really mean? I know, like, it comes up a lot, and I've had clients that have told me, well, the employer told me that I'm just overqualified. Like, what have you ever used that as a recruiter to talk to a candidate before?
I haven't personally, but okay. I've heard, and it's not a myth. A person could be overqualified for a job, and we can get into what that means. I haven't personally because I would admit with anybody watching this morning and anybody that that has gone through the experience of looking for a job, and most of us have, that it's a little demeaning when you tell somebody they're overqualified. But that doesn't make it any less of a reason that you don't get hired. It does exist. It's not myth. But I personally hate to tell somebody. What I would ask somebody to do sometimes in the way I describe when I have to do rejections is you really bring some meaningful experience and accomplishments to the table, and my suggestion for you is to seek something that's going to provide you more of a challenge. That's the closest I will get to looking at somebody and saying, you're overqualified. Because I got it myself over at different stations in my career, and I didn't like it either, frankly.
Everybody, so people apply to jobs, right? Because they are interested in it. They think that they can do it. It's looking like something that they do want to actually do. They get to the point, like, that's the other part of that. As a recruiter, and I used to be a recruiter, like, you don't get the call for the position by the person not thinking that you can do the job, right? Like they think that you can do the job.
Right.
But then you get into the interview situation, and now we're having a conversation about the position. Yeah. And again, you're not going to be in the chair if they don't think you can do the job. We don't have time. Right. Recruiters are busy. We don't have a lot of time to waste, right? So it's now then more a fact of, like, we get to that point. It's like, well, Scott, you're overqualified.
Right. No, right. Most of those people are screened out before they ever get in front of somebody. Okay. The only people that are going to even get an interview, if they're, I even in this forum, I'm hesitant to use the term overqualified. It just kind of makes me uncomfortable, but I will use it. Even if, a person is generally screened out if they do appear to be overqualified before they get to an interview. Okay. And, there are times it's clear, and we'll talk about what gives them, we can talk about, and I know we will, what gives employers, hiring managers, the willies about talking to somebody they think is overqualified. And that is very real, and that's something, it's going to be very difficult to overcome that for you as a candidate without demeaning yourself. And you never want to do that. You never want to make less of the work you've done, because it just puts you in a bad place.
I think that's correct, because like you don't want to diminish the experience that you have,
Right.
or even lessen it.
Well,
Like
it can erode your confidence. And if you lose confidence in yourself, you're toast in an interview.
100%. I that though leads to the purpose of the actual interview,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't quite get. They
Right.
think that they're there to get the job. That's not why you're there in the interview.
Or if I may, to explain their qualifications. And that's maybe 20% of the reason you're in the interview. Like you said
Yeah.
earlier, if they didn't think you were qualified, you wouldn't be in the interview. Okay.
That's right. That's exactly 100% correct.
Yeah.
Just real quick in the chat. Good morning, Elijah Chan. Thank you for letting me know we're live. Cassandra Dixon, Fred Needham, and Wendy Erb. Thank you guys for watching. And by the way, you're hanging out in the chat. Get connected to each other. You never know who somebody's going to know out there. Get you that lead. So, do you think it is a good idea for candidates that have more of a senior background, they're coming in to interview, to address the overqualification from the get?
No, I don't.
Okay, explain.
Fair question. And you know, I'll even say it's a damn good question, because I think I don't know what the folks watching will do, and I don't know what you will do. But I know when I used to go into in an interview, I was definitely guilty of overthinking it, and that also becomes a negative. Okay, go in there, put your best game forward, put your best foot forward, whatever your aphorism is in that context. But when you start to overthink something, you can get too hung up in your own thoughts, and then you can not listen to the hiring manager or the interviewer, and that's dangerous, right? We've talked many times about answering the interviewer's questions. You have to answer.
Right.
And if you're so hung up in your own thoughts, you could either avoid the question or not put forth the best answer, which puts you in the best light. Having said that, that's why I don't think people should introduce the notion. You know, I've directed. Here, I'm going to pull an example out of thin air. So I've directed 75 people in a retail environment. That's why I'm looking for this full-time job at XYZ store. Okay, I wouldn't introduce it if don't introduce something that you don't know that the hiring manager is even thinking about. Maybe they have a reason for having you there, in spite of the fact that you may appear to be overqualified. Okay, and again, if they had, I don't think this can be overemphasized, and we've already emphasized it 2 times, so we're getting close to the limit.
We're gonna hit.
We're beating this dead horse.
No, but it's important, though, Scott.
If they were concerned about you being overqualified, you wouldn't be there in the first place. So the manager, the hiring manager, or the interviewer, I like to use the phrase hiring manager because that's who, and you would have worked with in your recruiting also. Mm-hmm. The hiring manager has managed, at least temporarily, to allay those concerns enough that they're interested in seeing what you have to offer. And can you form a bond? Are you coachable? Because I can tell you that's the number one thing hiring managers look for. Are you coachable? Which translates in everyday English to, can you work, can you be a contributing and can you offer contributions to the business, but can you contribute to making the team better? And that becomes a coaching point for a lot of the manager that you want to work for you want that kind of manager because you'll grow, and growth is what it's all about. That's another tack, but they've managed to put those concerns about your overqualifications, the possibility that you're overqualified, in the background, and they're willing to see what else you have to offer. and why you're here today for this conversation.
As the recruiter, have you had conversations with what appears to be on paper candidates that are way overqualified for the job that you're recruiting for?
Without saying the words.
Okay.
It's,
Well, right.
Again, and it's also because it would put me on the defensive. But I'll tell you what I would ask that candidate, and they can read between the lines. It's an indication of their own perceptiveness, which is, why are you interested in this job?
Yeah.
You know, I might say, gosh, you've done some really phenomenal work. You have a track record of career progression. Why, there's a lot of, and that's something that the recruiters I worked with on teams, in different recruiting environments. Career progression is an important thing because it tells you somebody saw something in this person, right?
Yeah.
So you have career progression, you've had some responsibility, your resume points out some accomplishments. That's a topic for another podcast. And there's a lot of positives, but it does appear like this job may not challenge you. So the question becomes, why are you interested in this? What is it about what you've seen or what you've heard attracted your interest? And now, I can tell you something. What am I looking for? Passion. You're going to have to convince me that you're so excited about this job because if you can't, I'm going to reinforce myself here. 100%. If you can't convince me of that, no way you're convincing the hiring manager. Okay. And if you can't convince either of us, then getting over that speed bump or that hump of the perception that you're overqualified, almost impossible.
We had a question in the chat. Fred asked, what are some examples of why overqualification would be a reason for rejection?
So this gets into something we were going to talk about. If you want to answer that, I'm ready. But
yeah, go ahead.
So, the number one thing hiring managers, beyond the basic qualifications. Now that's actually a very broad term. We know that.
Yeah.
Because the basic qualifications for, like in today's environment, a job involving working with AI are different from the basic qualifications for putting up stock in a convenience store. And I'm not making less of one. They're different.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So beyond determining that you possess those basic qualifications, yes, that is part of the interview, but that will be on your resume. If that's not on your resume, again, I'm very surprised if you even got an interview.
Yeah.
Okay. Having said that, the about this, at least in my experience, the single most important, I'll call it a background consideration. It's something that the hiring manager is thinking about it, and we as recruiters know that they're thinking about it, but you as a candidate don't, is this person going to stay? Okay. Because turnover, and to those of you watching, you don't see this, but it's very real in the workplace. There's a cost to turnover.
100%.
A significant cost. I've read different numbers, but if you're going for a mid-level to senior position, it can cost them well over $100,000 if the deal doesn't work out. And we know, and today's podcast is about the effect on you. We know it doesn't reflect well on you if you don't last on a role. I'm just being honest with everybody. But by the way, it doesn't reflect well on the hiring manager either, because their boss is going to start to question their ability to select talent. So that's that. But to answer the gentleman's question, that's the number one thing that hiring. Are you coachable? That's important. But if you're a reasonably good teammate, but you're not going to stay, or I get the perception that you're not in it for the long run, or that you're not interested in my company for the long run, you're out. You're out. It's that simple.
It comes down. I think you're right, Scott, because it comes down to the why you want to work there.
Sure.
And that's going to be different for every candidate. But within the interview process, you need to make sure that everybody, whether you're overqualified or not, explain the why.
Yeah.
And in fact, like when we last time we hired in this department, that was my main focus.
Mm-hmm.
And I told our senior director, Jill, can we please hire for why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could train skill, but I can't train like why you want to be here.
I've actually heard that very same line dozens of times. And that's why when we do, and I can tease you for the commercial if you're ready, but when we do the mock interviews,
Yeah.
one of the most consistent pieces of feedback, I hope it has value, I don't know, but one of the most consistent pieces of feedback I share is what will get you success. I've been getting interviews, but I haven't been getting hired. Okay. So the thing I think about when I hear that is, are you expressing, without going off the wall, let's not get crazy about it, but are you expressing a passion to work for this company, to work for this manager, to do this kind of work? Are you expressing excitement about it? Because that's what will set you apart. And that's a big why factor. That's an answer to the why question.
Yeah.
And it's by the way, it's why we talk about, and you and I have, and I know other people that you've had on this presentation talk about doing research, because that's where you can find something that gets you excited. You only need one or two things. You don't want to bowl the person over. You don't want them to fall back in their chair with your excitement. You want them to feel like you're connected to the opportunity and you feel like you can really make an impact. So part of that is your qualifications, but part of that is the excitement that you exhibit about being part of this process and making a contribution. Something that you say a lot of times, making a contribution to the business, something you say a lot of times, Jason, which is solving my problem as a manager.
That's right.
All right. And those are very, very dynamic and very active, in a job search. Can you solve that manager's and that company's problems? Okay. And sometimes the trick is, and I've had candidates ask me this, how do I know what those are? Well, you can ask questions.
Ask.
Do some research. See if you can uncover anything. Maybe based on the experience that you've had, you've overcome something that they may not know they have. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to be a little careful about it. You don't want to criticize the company, but you want to be able to provide solutions. Okay, and again, to feed this back to your question, that feeds the why. If I can do that, that's why I'm here. That's why you need to hire me.
That's that's the part of the thing that I mentioned a minute ago. It's like people don't understand the reason why they're in the interview. They're there to sit and listen and decide if they could solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't tell you what the problem is, you just ask what position does this problem, what do I solve in this position, or what keeps you up late at night?
You don't You don't leave the interview with it, but a hiring manager that doesn't give you a chance to ask questions, probably I would suggest to you, and I know this is a hard thing to do. This is a really hard thing to do, but rule them out. Okay, move on to the next opportunity. But when they ask you what questions, you could say, "So tell me something, Jason. I'm really excited about what I've read and about the opportunity to chat with you. What do you see as the challenges in the first 90 days of this person's tenure?" Yep. Something like that. Generally, and I'll tell you something else. If the hiring manager doesn't know the answer to that question, you don't want that job either. Okay? I'm telling you, move on, because that's somebody that doesn't have their own act together.
I don't know if you know this or not. Did you know I almost did not get hired here because I was too energetic?
I think I remember you telling me this
They
story
told me,
over the
yeah,
years.
They thought that I had too much energy for the department. And when Allison was doing references, she brought that up to somebody, and that the guy said, yes, maybe, but it's the diversity that your organization has that makes it work. And so you're talking about like being bowled over by that was me. I almost didn't get hired. I was too energetic.
But that speaks to, if I could take not a 90-degree, but maybe a 30-degree turn, that speaks to something else about the perception of being overqualified, which is you're interviewing with a hiring manager who's fundamentally insecure. And those people do exist. and I hope you never run into it. I would encourage my hiring managers to always shoot to hire people that are better than them.
Sure.
You know what? They didn't all agree, and it's like, well, I have to look out for myself. But when a hiring manager hires people that are better than him or her, that means that, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And it's like, and now if you're really interested in solving your team's challenges and the challenges that the company has presented with you, you want to hire people that are better than you.
Yeah.
But there's that one bad apple, I guess, in the barrel who says, well, if I hire 5 people that are better than me, how long am I going to have my job? And if you're working for a company like that, then you have to think about your future there as well.
I remember, I think it was Bill Gates that said, we don't hire great people to tell them what to do. We hire them to tell us what to do.
I think I've read that.
Yeah.
Bezos has been quoted saying, we like to hire people who've been right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and results driven.
You
right?
want to be successful as a department. Like,
right.
I remember, I understand that part of my job is to make sure that my senior director looks good in her role.
Exactly. I think.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Enough said. You're exactly right. If you go about your work that way, first of all, it promotes a certain sense of humility because you're not looking for headlines.
Yeah.
You'll get them. If you keep doing the right thing, you'll get them. I'm very confident about that. Okay. But if you keep thinking, how can I make my boss look better to their boss? That's a perfect mindset for success. It still is. It was that way 100 years ago, and I think it's still true today.
We had a question. Penny asked, other than why or excitement, how can a candidate let a hiring manager know that the person is making a pivot to take a step back in the profession and grow with the company?
So this is something we've talked about before.
Great question, Penny.
And it is a great question. And and I don't want to squash anybody's ambition, not by any stretch, because and I know somebody that made a career change. You have to be patient. You have to be very patient, and you have to keep trying and don't lose. It's not easy. That's where I'm going with this. It's not. I did it myself. It's years ago. It's not easy, and you have to have a vision. You have to, not lose sight of your dream. If you have a certain kind of work that you want to do, and that involves a career change, and there are ways to describe that to a hiring manager, and I think some of that is driven by the research you've done. If you wake up tomorrow morning and you say, well, AI is really where it's at, I'm going for a job that involves AI, you better learn a little bit more about what AI means to the marketplace and be able to articulate that. But that is the difference. And so it again, we use terms like, and I think rightfully so, excitement, passion. It worked for you, and I'm glad it did. And it has worked for a lot of people. But you want to make sure that because one of the things they're looking for is, can this candidate stay in control of themselves? Okay. If things don't go right, is this person going to self-immolate or some such thing? And so all of those behavioral, what we sometimes refer to as soft skills, again, one bite at the apple. You get one bite at the apple, so you better be good, okay? And that also means not getting too over the top, okay? And staying within control and sounding like a rational, logical thinker in terms of the work that you've done and the work that you're going to do.
I remember years ago, I was an on-site manager, and I needed a front desk person. And if I had time and candidates were just random, like they would wander into the building,
mm-hmm.
and if there was a moment, I would go and go see them, because at this moment, front desk person is me most of the time, right? And I remember I had a candidate. She came in. And we had published the job posting on Career Builder or wherever.
Mm-hmm. Monster. Yeah.
And she came in and she's like, "Hey, I'm interested in the receptionist position." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm the recruiter for that. Do you have a resume? She's like, yes. She gives me this resume. I was like, let's go over here and sit down at the side table and talk. And I'm looking at her resume, director of operations.
Yeah.
Senior manager of people or what she's like upper level, right? And I look at her and I say, so you've done a lot in your career.
Yeah.
You realize this is just a front desk position. She's like, I understand. I'm like, okay, so this is not a gateway for you to jump into being a manager, director level. Like, she's like, I understand. She goes, listen, here's where I am in my career. She goes, I've had my career. I've been a director. I've been executive level. I don't want to do that anymore. She goes, what I want to do is provide value. And she goes, I promise you this. If you take a chance on me, I will be absolutely the best front desk person you have ever had. Yeah. Hired her on the spot.
Did you?
No kidding. I hired her right there. I said,
good?
She was amazing.
Yeah.
She did exactly what she promised she would do. She was the best. Oh, I got goosebumps just thinking about that.
Really?
Yeah. She was amazing. Yeah. But she was able to convey to me what it is that she could do. So on paper, Scott, she was way overqualified for a front desk position. But when she came in and told me what it is she wanted to do, now I'm like, I understand.
And it speaks to it. It's interesting listening to your story because it speaks to something that this is a little bit of inside recruiting. It's a term that we use, and we've talked about this, positioning. What are you positioned to do next? And this person was positioned to do that job. But the challenge you have and the challenge that she has sounds like she I guess it was a lady, she knew is she had to convince you that she was positioned and she was able to do it. If you can't do that, you'll have a nice conversation with somebody, but you're not getting the job.
No.
You're not getting the job. No. And positioning is, if you said to me, hey, Scott, that's a little nebulous. It is, but it's important. That doesn't make it any less important. And a hiring manager will look at your resume and talk to you. And one of the questions they're asking themselves is this person positioned to do this work? Is this a reasonable next step? Now, to 20 hiring managers, that lady might not have been positioned. But for you, between what you perceived as what she could bring to the table and what you were willing to do and what you were willing to pay, okay, and right. was that going to be able to meet her needs? She's now positioned for that job, and bingo, it worked.
Yep.
Okay, and I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Penny said the sell is hard when the director says a person would be quote unquote bored when they can't contribute to projects in other departments. I think sometimes. And then Fred asked what happened to the front desk person. She was still there when I left that company. So she was still there. I think sometimes that is the thought from the hiring manager is that you're overqualified and you'll get bored of the work and then you'll leave, right?
Probably. And do hiring managers start to create reasons to reject? Yeah, they do. Probably sooner than most of us think in the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably sooner than most of us think. That's why I know I've preached this. We've talked about this. I think Jim Warner's talked about this. All you're doing in an interview, you're not, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, you're not trying to get the job. You're just trying to keep the process alive.
That's right.
Keep your goals limited. You know, what is it? How many bites does it take to eat an elephant or something? One at a time.
Yeah.
We don't know, but it's one at a time. Keep the process alive. But in that context, the hiring manager may already begin thinking 2 minutes into the conversation, okay, I'm going to find a reason to reject this. You know, you may not ever know the reason you got rejected, okay? And the reason I've always said so candidates ask me, what feedback? I don't have any specific feedback. What I can tell you is we found a candidate that closer matches our needs and the needs of the position. today, and that's the direction we're headed in. But if a hiring manager says you're not going to be challenged, that is that he's telling you, he or she's telling you, they think you're overqualified, and it's very difficult to overcome that. My suggestion would be politely, thank you, I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss this with you, and move on. And it's hard. I know it's hard when you're looking for a job. I've been there, you've been there, but that's the best advice I can offer.
How important do you think it is, Scott, to tell stories in the interview?
Well, that's how you bring about the passion.
Okay.
It's critical.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat, if you will, excuse me, I used to think Caveat was a late night talk show host. The caveat.
It's Dick Cavett.
Whoa, that's the way it is. Okay. The caveat is you have to stay concise, stay within yourself, and certainly be factual. Don't oversell that. But stories are really important. And when we talk about, I think this is something we've talked about over the years. I think you call it the STAR system. I call it behavioral interview. Mm-hmm. And that's why companies favor those kinds of interviews, and you should too. You should too. And I've had candidates in the mock program say, "Gee, I didn't expect that question." Okay, that's not on me. That's on you. You didn't think about what I might ask. Now, someone out there might say, "Well, am I supposed to be able to predict what you might ask?" No, but you should at least think about it.
Okay. Yeah, I like to think the interview is kind of like a test that you have the answers to.
No argument.
We can't know everything that they're going to ask.
No,
you just can't. But we do know they could potentially start the interview with, "Tell me a little bit about yourself."
Right.
And I know that, so Scott's mentioned it twice, so we're just going to go ahead and stop and do the commercial.
Okay.
So if y'all don't know, we have a virtual interview practice program here at JFS. We do it every Tuesday at 1 Central Time. What happens is I will take you and an interviewer and put you into a breakout room. They will interview you for 30 minutes. Then there will be 15-ish minutes of feedback. Scott.
Yeah.
Scott runs long. It's more than 15. You're going to get more than 15 minutes out of Mr. Butnick. I promise you. And then you're done. You can log out. And then at the end of the week, by Friday, the interviewer will have sent me a feedback form, which I will then forward on to you. So you'll have something tangible and in your hand by Friday of things that you want to improve on your interview. If you're wondering, how do I get into that? Because I need the practice. Yes, you do. Because I tell you what, the one misstep that I see job hunters make time and again is you don't put enough practice into your interviewing. Interviewing is a skill like any other, and the more you practice, the better you get at it. I currently have 7 people on the team. I'm about to add one more. Next week, somebody's going to be shadowing either you or Jim. And I'm about to add 8 people on the team. That's 8 people you could practice interviewing with. Everybody's got a different personality. The more people you see and talk to, the more practice you get in, the more confident you will be in the interview. How do you get into it? Email me. My email is my name, Jason Hopper at jfsdallas.org. Put VIP2 in the subject line. I'm going to need your resume, and I'm also going to need a job title that you want to interview for, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to AI and have it list, like, you're a senior accountant. Great. I will have it list questions for a senior accountant, and then Scott will ask you questions based off of that list, as well as some behavioral-based interview questions as well. I'm full up today. Next week, I got 3 spots open. If you want to interview with Scott next week, he will be here and interviewing people. And also, too, I know this. So one question that you ask every person that shows up for the practice interviews, you ask them, tell me about a time you had a difficult customer. How did you resolve that? Every single person that you talk to, you ask that question, right?
Just about.
Yeah, because again, the interview, we can't know everything they're going to ask, but we can be prepared for things they could ask. And that is a question you ask almost everybody.
You have to think about it. And can I add something to your commercial? Because I know and I think most recruiters harp on. I had this conversation years ago with Allison, with your prior manager, about making sure you put accomplishments in your resume.
100%.
When you do your resume, don't tell me what you did. Tell me what you accomplished. And I'm setting that up for a brag warning, but it speaks to the people that do these mock interviews. I'm probably the least effective, but there's some really talented recruiters that are doing this, and we're starting to see results. We're starting to have people that contact Jason. Hey, I did the mock interview, and 2 weeks later, I got hired. Now, am I going to tell you it was directly because they participated in this program? Only to the extent that people have said almost as much as that.
Yeah.
So there's value in it, and it's just, that's very gratifying, quite frankly. So yeah, it can help you. But yeah, you need to think about, and you say, well, how do I know what to think about? And that's one of the reasons we talk about doing research. The research will tell you. Research the company, research the person, look them up on LinkedIn, see if they have something that you can connect with. Maybe it'll say that, maybe it'll say something like they were a women's volleyball coach or a little league baseball coach, or something that you can connect to try and build a relationship. Because when you do that, you've just taken a quantum leap in your success ratio in the interview. You say, but Scott, I'm only in the interview for an hour, for 45. I know. I didn't say it was easy, but it can be done.
For sure.
It can be done.
We had a question in the chat. Penny asked, how can we convince the ATS system that has AI not to decline the quote unquote seasoned candidate? Penny, seasoned, it sounds like they're about to put you in the oven to eat you later. We make sure we got that right. Seasoning. Scott.
Pre-AI, in AI, I generally tell people, don't sweat ATSs. Just tell me what you accomplished. If you tell me what you accomplished, because if you're trying too hard to steer your resume towards what the job description is asking for, most likely that's going to get fleshed out if you get an interview, okay? Because you've got to be able to back up what you say. You said something earlier that I want to connect here, which is about providing answers. I generally counsel people, we've had this conversation on some of the mock interviews. Be careful not to give the hiring manager all of the answer. Communicate to them that you can solve their problem, but don't give them the answer. If you give them the answer in the interview, you know what's going to happen? They don't need you. Okay,
Right.
They don't need you. And you say, well, how do I do that? And that's a fair question. And that's the art of interviewing. You want to give them enough to let them know that you can help solve their challenges, solve their problems, but you don't want to give them the absolute. And why do I know? Because I've been guilty of it myself. Okay. So,
Brandy Alexander, thanks for that. She said in the chat that rejection is a blessing mindset that's best to have. Good morning, Aaron Titsworth. Superhero recruiter Aaron Titsworth is in the chat. He said studying the JD is part of the unlock to your path. And Rhonda, thank you for linking up my email address for the practice interviews. You talk about the ATS, but and AI as well. And every ATS has a form of AI in it. That's
agree.
not at all new.
it did before we knew the term.
That's correct. That's how it works, actually. And I think it's important, when we do apply to jobs, that we make sure that you tailor the resume to the actual job posting to get a better chance of it being seen by the human.
Right. But you got to be able to back it up. And if you don't, that's going to come through fairly early if you do get the chance to interview, even if it's just a phone screen. And that's going to come through pretty soon. You can try. I think that if this may be a little bit ethereal, but if you're the right person for the job, that's going to come through without you having to do much to your resume to speak to the job description, the qualifications. I don't, because then I give credit to recruiters and to hiring managers for helping to parse that out. If I send a bunch of people to interview with my hiring manager that aren't qualified, I'm going to hear about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is not a good conversation as a recruiter to have
Yeah.
when you're wasting your
No,
hiring
it's not.
manager's time. Again, it's not a one bite at the apple thing, because most hiring managers know hiring is an art, not a science.
And I think like there have been times in my career where I've submitted candidates and then the hiring manager didn't like any of
Yeah.
them and I had to go get 5 more new candidates for
Yeah.
them. But I mean, that was kind of a rare thing.
Right.
Just because I most of the time did my job correctly.
What often happened to me was they liked 2 of them, but they still wanted to see more.
Oh God, that's the worst.
Well, yeah, but you got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go get on the treadmill again, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and so being overqualified, or making sure that you are conveying the why,
mhm.
the reasons, I think is the thing that is and going to sell you to the recruiter and ultimately the hiring manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the stories, to come back to your point, really important. A lot of people, let me use an example if we have just a minute here.
Yeah.
And this is personal, that this is real. And again, I didn't come on here today to brag, but it's a good example of a why and how you use a story to prove the why. One of the questions that you're quite likely to get is, in a behavioral environment, tell me about a time that you brought about a change that created something positive for the business. Okay, so years ago, I'm a recruiter at a large bank, and I was recruiting in the affluent client segment. So to give you some context, that's not super wealthy people, but it's people that have stability and they're making a nice living, and then they're acquiring assets, but they need some help. And the bank had a division that catered to those people. And what we began to realize is that we weren't getting many employee referrals. And it's a large bank. So
Okay.
I won't mention the name. This is not about doing a commercial, but it's a large bank. And in any business, in any recruiting effort, employee referrals are gold
Yeah.
because it gets the job filled.
Yep.
Referrals get hired. If you that's a whole other podcast about networking.
Yeah.
That's why you network, so you can get referred. Okay. So I thought about this and I thought about this, and I always believed we offered an incentive for referrals, and it was paltry. It was so small. We had about the same incentive for these client manager roles. It was only a little bit more than the incentive for teller referrals. I kid you not. Okay. So I asked my executive that I supported for some time on her calendar. And she was more than gracious about it. So what's on your mind, Scott? I said, Susan, we need to do something about employee referrals. We're not getting any employee referrals. And you and I both agree we offer a terrific opportunity. We should be getting more and better quality referrals. She says, what do you propose? So what I had done was, and fact-based decision making. I called our finance group for this division, and I found out how much, it was called a client manager, how much in revenue a client manager generates on a daily basis, the average client manager.
Okay.
Taking the amount of revenue, dividing it by the number of client managers and the number of days. I mean, even a math bozo like me can figure that out with a calculator. And I went to her and I said, we're generating, it was like $4,000 or $5,000 a day per client manager in revenue. And we're paying like $100 for employee referrals. She said, how much do you think we should do? I said, 1,000.
Easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she said, let me give it some thought. I'll get back to you. And when Susan, she was kind of executive, when she said, I'll get back to you, she got back to you. She called me back about 2 days later. She said, how do we roll this out? So, well, okay. And so the answer is yes. And I won't bore you with the rest of the story. But guess what? The employee referrals jumped by over 50%.
Surprise.
Okay.
Yeah.
It took and the inside story took a little promotion because employee referrals don't work without promoting the program, and we knew that, and so there was some empirical data about that in this organization. So we promoted it, and they started to flow in, and guess what? The time to fill went down.
Good job, Scott.
You know, so
Wait.
that's why story. Then that's a story I would share with somebody who says, "Tell me about a time you were a change agent."
I mean, and the idea, of course, being that you did that there, you could bring that same type of problem solving here.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the thing that often makes the difference. I think, like, most of the time, when you don't get hired, the reason is somebody came along either before you or right after you that had a better story
100%.
than you did.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And this is something I work with clients on, is creating those success stories that are relatable, or they will evoke emotion. Because and I say this all the time. The quote is from Maya Angelou, which is like, people won't remember the things you say, they will remember how you made them feel.
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
if you can make them feel
That's right.
a specific way in the interview, you are now winning.
And that is uber applicable to interviews.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because it's not like, oh, I screwed that story up, I didn't tell it right, and they didn't hire. No. Somebody had a better story than you did.
And I know we're getting close to the end. The other thing that we see in the mock interviews a lot is, and I get this, I really understand this, is people are reluctant to not embellish. Don't embellish, don't lie. But don't be afraid to talk about your role in a positive way.
Yeah.
You know, because this is what happened. People, that's the difference. You know, I've talked to a number of people. Yeah, I did this, and we got this response, and so on and so forth. Okay, so did you get any recognition? Yeah, my manager recognized me in front of my peers. Okay, you have to volunteer that.
That's right.
We've talked about that. You have to volunteer that. As a recruiter, or certainly the hiring manager, don't make me ask you, because that's critical. That's the person the hiring manager wants to hire. Career progression is important. Recognition is important.
It's the story.
It's the story. It's the story.
All right, Scott, we're like at time, so let's do the fun question for the day. I ask this one a lot because it changes a lot, but like, what was the last great TV show you watched?
Oh, the last great TV show I watched. Okay.
You're busy, but I know you watch some TV because I talked to Brenda.
We're watching something now. We're not through the last episode because it hasn't dropped yet. But and they didn't pay me to come on here and say this, but I'll answer your question.
Tell me that.
Apple TV Plus, Your Friends and Neighbors with John Hamm.
Yeah.
It's got us. It started out. It has evolved from a comedy to a comedy drama to a dramedy.
Okay.
And we're like Friday night isn't just the end of the work week. It's the night that Your Friends and Neighbors drops their next episode. Okay. I don't think we've been this excited about a TV show together since Dallas was on.
Oh, wow.
45 years ago.
The last great thing I saw was the Yellowstone spinoff Marshals. And the last episode for the season dropped, and I was just blown away because I should have seen all of that coming. They left enough clues to put it together. I did not see it coming, and that was what blew me away about the season finale of Marshals. I was like, oh my God, did that just happen? Like, I could not believe that just happened.
Yeah.
That's how it ended. And it's a slow burn right up until the finale, but it was awesome. It was really good. Okay, so that is today overqualified, myth or a real barrier. Next week, Scott, you'll be back next week. And we will be talking, actually, we're talking about resumes next week, right?
Are we? Okay.
Yes,
Great.
I do believe so. We talked about resumes a little bit today. We're going to go into that a little bit more depth because Scott has seen, and I as well, just for doing the practice interviews, some of y'all got some bad resumes out there. Your formatting is just like like so, 2020. Like we don't do that anymore.
People that interview well often don't have a good resume, and that's truly the value of the mock interview program, to point that out. And because you say, well, if I interview well, but my resume, well, you're not going to get a lot of interviews. You've got to get at bat, like pardon the sports analogy, but you got to get the at bats
That's right.
if you're going to hit home runs.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So come back, see us next week for interviews. There you have this big Caffeinate Your Career. You have a great week.